4.4 in the Vaal and 107.2 in Ekurhuleni. Now we're talking.
Welcome back to the Thursday evening edition of Power Business. We're currently speaking to Jackie Kennedy, the founder and chief executive officer of Lead Me. They, of course, offer a range of leadership and soft skills development courses on an online platform, which makes it much easier for anyone to sort of then say, I'll plug in whenever I am available. Jackie, over the past couple of years, there's probably been an elevated need for new ways of leading and for more innovative ways of leading, because businesses may traditionally have structured themselves in a particular way. The past couple of years have said, well, actually, you don't write the rules. The pandemic is writing the rules. How important has it been for business leaders to actually know how to lead through moments of crisis?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it really has been a crazy time. And I think leaders more than ever have been under such extreme pressure to make some tough decisions and, really to think strategically about, what kind of pivoting do they need to do in this moment in order to take the organization forward. And the most important thing there is a combination of, the ability to make decisions, but also to think about their people and what's right for the business. And it's been an incredibly tough time. And I think one of the things that we've seen is that often leaders at the top, they sometimes take it all on and they think that they've got to make these decisions on their own. And what we've seen in organizations is that it's probably because of the organizational structures that have been in place for so long, which is, if you think about the bureaucracy of these kind of tall structures, hierarchical, with lots of layers and top management, a few top people right at the top making all the decisions. And what we're seeing is that it's just not working anymore. It's too bureaucratic and slow for a world that is requires fast informed decisions, agility and innovation, and in some instances just missing the wave, holding on too tightly to something. You often see this in organizations where, you've got a vision for this product or this service, and you this is what you dreamt about and what you're going to do, but the market or the pandemic or whatever the case is telling you that you need to, it's not responding, and it's just so difficult to let go of that vision. And sometimes what we're seeing is that top level leadership needs to start including lower level employees. If you want to be a customer-centric organization, your people on the front line know better, have the best interaction with what your users, your customers are really, how they're using your product, how they're experiencing it, and how they're engaging with it. And this change in structures is requiring leaders to bring in the people that really know and help get support in making these decisions and collaborate more effectively in order to be able to take the organization forward. I always think of this great case study. I mean, it's not pandemic specific, but it was before that. But if you think about the BlackBerry versus Apple case study, right? The BlackBerry founder, the guy right at the top, was hell-bent on sticking to what he saw the BlackBerry, that it was just going to be for email comms on this phone. And while everyone in the organization was telling him, no, there's a new way of doing things, we've got to think differently about the layout and the phone's use and so on, and he just wouldn't let go of this vision, and there you go. And in no time, Apple took over, and BlackBerry was no longer, who even knows what a BlackBerry? There's probably some people listening now that like, what's a BlackBerry? But I think it's a great example of it. And I think, it's just a changing in the market. And we've got leaders that have been really, really tough, but there's a different way that's coming in, and there's an opportunity to bring in those individuals throughout your organization that can really help you problem solve and strategize and make decisions so that you can move more quickly with more of a customer focus.
The other important dimension of leadership is to, of course, not restrict it to just the top executive leader, but perhaps have it embedded as a practice across the entire organization. Putting interns on the leadership track may sound like a bit of a stretch for some people, but of course, if you want to retain them, you may as well teach them how to run that organization properly.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think one of the biggest things that we're seeing in the world of work is that the way we are coming together within an organization is changing. So, in the old structures, you have silos and we have departments, and you've got your marketing department and you've got your sales and your finance. And back in the day, there was very little interaction. And in some organizations, still now, you will see that there's, if you go in and you consult, you'll see, we've got a problem. We've got silo mentality within our organization. We're struggling to get this team interaction. And the reality is that the way of working has changed, And what it requires is people from all different levels and all different departments within an organization to come together and form almost like a task group or around a project team in order to solve a problem or innovate. And it takes people on all levels to do this. And when these new teams form, who's the leader of that team now? Because now they're out of their units, right? And so you need someone in that environment to step up and take the lead. And so this is this idea that these teams keep coming together, and they're not fixed. They keep, they keep coming and going. So different people are forming all the time to solve different problems. So now you've got the situation where you need more leaders within your organization, because these task force teams are needing different people in different instances on different projects to take the lead that are not generally a leader. They haven't been given that title or tenure. And what we often see in organizations is that, a lot of organizations have a weak middle layer. And what this means is they've got experts who are really good at their jobs. You always see this, like a great salesperson. And then that salesperson gets promoted to be a leader of a team, but they haven't been trained up to lead people. They're good at their job, but they haven't been trained up to lead people. And that's what you're seeing in these task forces with this new ways of working, that we're putting teams together to solve things, but now no one in that team can take the lead. And so this changing world of work is requiring leaders at all different levels.
And I think obviously for businesses that don't seem to appreciate the need to harness leadership throughout the organization, there's always a risk, as you're rightly saying, that you then end up promoting people who, in spite of a long track record in the company, quite simply then find themselves out of their depth in then having to turn around and manage an organization rather than managing their own individual portfolio.
Exactly. And I mean, this is commonplace, in these kind of old structured organizations where you see this people getting promoted based on length of service, so tenure, rather than ability or gone through a training program. And so often you see that, and it just doesn't work. They were great in their jobs, they were experts, and they were like top of their field, as I say, in sales or whatever the case is, but they haven't been trained up to manage a team, and it's a completely different set of skills.
Definitely a lot of deliberations that we need to sort of get people to understand the importance of learning how to do things properly. There's another concept that's emerged in recent times, and that's the Great Resignation of 2021. I imagine it isn't because people started hating their jobs, but a lot of circumstances conspired to actually facilitate this. Talk us through what it means.
Sure. So this is a really interesting one, and it's a topic around the world. We saw this in South Africa, we're seeing it in the States, and I think it's twofold. So the first part is the pandemic factors. So we saw a massive shift in workplace expectations, people being asked to work longer hours, less pay, they're working from home, so they're remote. Some people love it, some people hate it. They literally were at their jobs for the work environment. So it's a really bad experience for them. Some people had to take on all kinds of extra personal, dependencies and looking after kids and all of these things. And it just built up to making it so much harder, right? And we see for extreme burnout and toxic workplace cultures and companies that just didn't manage that from in-person into the remote world. And so I think some of those are some of the reasons for this huge resignation. But in actual fact, there were a whole lot of other forces at play that were already happening, and they are just growing rapidly. So if we think about the gig economy, now that has been growing rapidly for the last years. More and more people are becoming independent freelancers. They're hustling. They're realizing now, hey, I can work on my own time in my own way. I can leave this company and I can come back and contract to them for a certain number of hours and do some work. And I can also pick up other contracts, and basically they can increase their earning power. And so the gig economy is taking off, and it's taking off thanks to technology, because what we're also seeing is that there are platforms on the rise like Upwork where you can, put yourself out there to this global market and get opportunities all around the world. Which is another big thing, right? So the job market is open. Globalization together with digitalization means that you no longer need to reside where you work. So I can realize now, hang on a second, I can take my skills and I can start earning pounds, and I can have the best of both worlds and live in South Africa but be earning pounds, right? So that's a whole new thing that's happening, and it's actually quite sad for some of the smaller companies in South Africa, because how do you start to compete with this global market on terms of pay and all of these things? But it's a reality, and it's happening. There's a rise in entrepreneurship. There's a rise in the creator network. It's never been easier than before. You've got things like YouTube, which is, all kinds of ways for you to make money and so on. And then there's the makers market with Etsy. You can, never before there've been, things like Shopify, Take-A-Lot, Amazon. You can now resell things online. You can create your own shop. It's incredible what you can do. And I think a lot of people are waking up to this realization, do I want to be stuck, and especially during the pandemic, because it's like, I'm working alone at home behind my computer all day long on Teams or Zoom with 8 hours of meetings. Is this the way I want to be working? There's this massive movement in the world towards balance. I want to be working in my own way, at my own time, in my own place, right? And with all of these movements, this has become easier than ever before. So, the market has really opened up for the worker and for the employee. So I think those forces were at play before the pandemic, and now they've fast-tracked it thanks to the pandemic.
One possible risk, of course, is that some may be left behind. There is, of course, the threat of the great displacement if individual employees aren't able to keep up with the evolution in the ways and the practices of the world of work. Is this something that business leaders have warmed up to realize that, if the world of technology, for example, and the world of automation is forcing us to do things differently, we have to be taking responsibility for the reskilling and upskilling?
Yes, definitely, without a doubt. Some of the bigger corporates that we speak to and involved with, I've actually been incredibly impressed to see the steps that they are taking to upskill and reskill their employees. And it's a combination of technology skills and soft skills that they are working on in order to get their people to where they need to be able to, the next frontier. And I think it's interesting to see, the World Economic Forum mentioning what are those top 10 skills. And it really is a combination of the skills that we're looking at by 2025 that organizations need to be thinking about. And most forward progressing organizations are working on this. They are thinking about upskilling. And the reality is that if they're not, they're going to be left behind.
The skills of where we are and the world we live in, what are these new skills that every single business leader needs to be acutely aware of in order for them to be able to manage their businesses successfully, particularly in the time called 2022?
Yeah, so I think some of the top skills there are really around analytical thinking and innovation. More and more this ability for complex problem solving, because, in this competitive global market, you kind of need to be constantly thinking ahead and one step ahead. So, analysis skills, critical thinking, creativity is a massive one, because ultimately, getting ahead of your competitors is really about creativity and being solution focused. Of course, technology is key. So technology around design and programming and those kind of things is at the frontier. But then also on that list is leadership and social influence and things like resilience, stress tolerance, and flexibility. When have we ever been in been in a world of work at this pace? And I think one of the biggest crushing things is really, are people able to manage their stress and do they have resiliency and are they flexible? Those individuals that have that ability and can take initiative and can really manage change are individuals and leaders that are going to thrive. Those who can't, it's really going to be a difficult place and we'll end up falling behind.
Yeah, and we definitely cannot afford to run the risk of falling behind, because in a country with such high unemployment and so many people excluded from the economy at large, we cannot afford to lose the few people that have been able to enter into the economic bandwagon, particularly because we need to turn around the economy by getting all hands on deck.
100%. Sure. More than ever. And I think one of the biggest things that we need is really to develop more entrepreneurs in this country, because literally there are not enough companies to support the number of people, sadly. And so on a personal note, I'm actually involved in an entrepreneurship program in addition to my own business. And I strongly feel that the way forward for South Africa is we need to be upskilling and developing more entrepreneurs so that people can start more businesses and hire more people. It's key to our success as a country.
Very interesting developments out there. Unfortunately, completely out of time. Thank you very much, Jackie Kennedy, the founder and CEO of Lead Me, giving us some insights into the way business leaders should start thinking, particularly in response to the world we live in and the way things are. There are some leadership courses that you can do. Online is obviously the way to go, which means that you are able to actually adopt the flexibility of even doing things on your own time. So that is definitely something to be recommended.